Incredible twist. Little girl starves for 3 days, pleads for help, then millionaire discovers her. Ellie's stomach grumbled loudly. 3 days without food made her feel like an empty balloon, deflated and lost. She exploited every corner of their cramped apartment for leftovers, but there was nothing left. Each hour stretched painfully. Her mother was supposed to be home now, not lying sick in a hospital bed. Relying on voices from her faded memories, Ellie fought to keep courage alive, pressing her palms against her stomach, willing it to quiet down. Fear clawed at her insides, a darker hunger than the one that gnawed and twisted her gut. Loneliness seeped into every crack of the apartment, wrapping around her like a wet blanket, turning familiar rooms into foreign territories. Sliding colorful pieces of paper under her neighbors' doors became a ritual. "Please help, I'm hungry," those simple phrases scratched out with shaky letters spoke volumes. Each plea was an echo of her dwindling hope, plunging deeper into despair as time pressed on. What if nobody read them? Or worse, what if they did and chose to ignore, trapped in their own lives? The ink smudged with tears she fought to hold back. Ellie faced her immovable reality, alone, scared, and desperately seeking a hand. Meanwhile, Jake strolled through the faded streets of a town that felt both foreign and familiar. The millionaire tech mogul returned after a decade, seeking roots he thought had vanished with his success. But as he wandered through the uneven sidewalks, memories slapped him his childhood, a montage of forgotten dreams and eerie echoes of laughter. His gut twisted when he saw the colorful pieces of paper poking from beneath his old neighbor's door, words that struck him deeply, as if they carved paths through his past. "Help, hungry!" Ellie's cries morphed into sirens blaring in his mind. The stark contrast of his world luxurious dinners, boundless wealth compared to the hunger penned by that little girl pained him. Should he take action? That question smoldered an itch in his conscience. His parents always taught him to work hard, achieve success. But would turning his back on Ellie's struggle mean reinforcing the divide they sought to escape? Jake halted. The weight of his privilege bore down, his stomach tightening just like Ellie's, only her hunger was real. Jake felt himself teetering between his past burdens and present victories. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the days melted into each other, Ellie stayed up late calculating how many meals had slipped through her fingers, how many days could stretch illusions of survival. Each silent moment filled with frantic breaths, Jake's intentions unclear, both clinging to their atomized existences. He found her notes, strangely captivating. She was unyielding in spirit despite the darkness of her world. Their stories, the millionaire and the starving girl, danced on a knife's edge, inviting complication with every moment trapped in hesitation. Would he break through, confronting the ghosts of the town he left behind? An uneasy storm brewed, possibilities spun into a thick web of uncertainty. What if he tried to help and it went wrong? What if the townsfolk rejected him, convinced he had no right to intervene, his roots belonging to a past they abhorred? Clenching his fists, Jake questioned whether he could reconcile compassion with his wealth, and Ellie, still grasping at shreds of hope, awaited someone willing to see her, acknowledge her struggle. As tension crackled between them, the air thickened, charged with potential salvation or lingering despair, each moment stretching toward an unimaginable conclusion. Would either of them have the courage to bridge this chasm, or remain stuck in silence? As the shadows of his past haunted him, Jake grappled with a choice that felt monumental. Each evening, the echoes of Ellie's notes resonated louder. They invaded his mind during lavish feasts and high-profile meetings. He examined their pure desperation, contrasting sharply with the curated conversations and the globe-trotting world he equated with success. In the glamorous atmosphere of his life, Ellie was a ghost, an intertwined burden he could not shake. He renewed his intent, stepping away from the random chaos of nightlife to reclaim his ground. He envisioned the little girl shivering in the cold, her tiny body yearning for something as simple as a meal. No more empty gestures. It was time for a real plan, something that provided not just momentary relief but possessed the potential to instigate change. Jake resolved to do more than provide temporary food and comfort. He was determined to find out why Ellie was alone, abandoned in her hour of need. One morning, he returned to the apartment complex with decisions cleaved to his chest. He traveled down the dimly lit hall, slowly scanning each door, few still adorned with festive lights from childhood memories. It was hopelessly silent. Could Ellie's situation have been overlooked for so long? He could all but taste the regret brewing within him as he reached her door. In juxtaposition to his grand accomplishments, a sinking realization surfaced. His success had kept him blind to the realities of those left behind. He knocked softly, taking a steadying breath. His heart drummed in his chest as the minutes ticked away. The quiet corridor echoed back his indecision. What would he say? Would she trust him, a man cloaked in luxury? What assurance did he have that his presence wouldn't spark more fear than comfort? When the door creaked open, Jake saw a fragile figure standing before him, hair unkempt and eyes swollen from lack of sleep, yet fiercely determined. Ellie's gaze pierced through him, laden with both suspicion and a flicker of hope. His mouth opened, words caught behind a dam of emotion. "I saw your notes," he stammered. His voice shook as he continued, "I want to help." Ellie's brow knitted in skepticism, her spirit pulling tight like a coiled spring. "Help? What do you know about help?" She folded her arms defensively, words carrying a fiery sharpness, birthed from too many disappointments. Jake's mind swam, realizing he had one chance. The weight of his wealth and success had stripped him of the emotional language he needed now. "Please let us talk. I can bring food, but I also want to understand your life. What brought you to this point?" Ellie hesitated, measuring his sincerity. Curiosity flickered within, battling with her ingrained distrust. The quiet low rumble in her stomach demanded attention and pushed her toward him, yet fear held her rooted in place. "Meet me tomorrow," she finally said, rolling her shoulders back as if summoning misplaced power. "If you're really here to help, I'll show you my life." Jake withdrew, a mix of relief and anxiety washing over him. Tomorrow would bring answers and perhaps the start of a bridge between their separate worlds. Little did he know, this meeting would open doors beyond awareness, bringing to light a shared struggle that bound them both. The sun dipped low, signaling the end of the day, but it also ignited a flame within Jake. He had stepped into the unknown to confront his past, but was he ready for the realities it harbored? Would Ellie expose him to the vulnerability he had carefully shielded? The thought unsettled him as he fumbled with hope and hesitation. Tomorrow, as secrets unfurled and bridges trembled, life might pivot in ways he could never anticipate. Would he prove himself worthy of Ellie's trust, or would their connection fracture before it began? As dawn broke, a quiet resolve hardened within Jake. The moments leading to his meeting with Ellie felt monumental, unlike any boardroom confrontation or networking dinner he'd ever faced. Today, he would peel back the layers of his carefully constructed facade to unveil a more fragile part of himself. He dressed with more purpose than usual, abandoning the tailored suit for a simple button-up shirt and jeans that allowed him to feel less like a businessman and more like someone who genuinely wanted to connect. He arrived early, pacing outside the worn apartment complex, heart racing in anticipation. Each step toward the entrance felt weighted. The prospect of engaging with Ellie was both daunting and invigorating. He could hardly fathom the gravity of uncovering her reality while grappling with his own misplaced sense of success. Ellie opened the door slightly ajar, her eyes darting around before fixing back on him. An immediate tension filled the space between them. She stood on the threshold, lips pressed tightly together, body language radiating caution. Jake wanted to bridge the gap, to pull her into an embrace that conveyed understanding, but he realized he had no right to assume intimacy. Instead, he offered a tentative smile. "Thank you for meeting me," he began, voice steady yet betraying a hint of anxiety. "I brought some food as promised." He held out a bag packed full of fresh bread, fruits, and snacks, but her gaze remained cautious, measuring his every gesture. I don't need charity, she snapped, her defense a reflex honed by countless disappointments. Jake swallowed hard, fighting to recalibrate their dynamic. I know it's not charity. I want to listen, he replied, his voice softening. Tell me about your life. What does help look like for you? Ellie hesitated, the walls built around her life tangible in the air. She stepped back, allowing him entrance, but the openness was devoid of wariness. The apartment's simplicity struck him, not adorned yet brimming with remnants of warmth, crayon drawings, worn-out books, a patchwork blanket draped over a small chair. This is it, she said, signaling to the modest surroundings with an outstretched hand. Welcome to my world. The reality hit him like cold water. Ellie's world was one where comfort could not be taken for granted. The cracked floors and peeling paint threw into stark relief the glamorous life he had crafted. It was a stark reminder that not everyone had the privilege to hide away in excess. What happened to your parents? He ventured cautiously, sensing that the truth was likely layered beneath the surface, tangled with fear and pain that had accumulated over time. She flinched, her expression turning tight. They're gone. Just gone. The weight of those words hung heavy in the air. He noted the slight tremor in her voice, the way she immediately retreated inward, the vulnerability drawn out painfully. Pain surged through Jake as he watched her shoulders slump. I'm sorry, he said instinctively, searching for words that wouldn't feel hollow. I didn't mean to pry. Ellie looked up, piercing him with a gaze that revealed her inner turmoil. You think you can just stroll in here with your fancy bag and fix everything? You don't know anything about survival. Jake felt a familiar sting at her condemnation, yet his heart pounded with resolve. You're right, I don't know. But I want to understand, and I need to know how can I help. Not just with food, but in a way that matters? The fire in her eyes reflected both skepticism and a hint of longing, a glimmer of hope buried beneath layers of distrust. Can you make things different? She countered, challenging him as if he was an unwelcome stranger breaking into her reality. Can you be counted on? Can you even stay? Her questions resonated deep within him, chiseling away at the shell he'd built through years of professional detachment. He was forced to confront the truth about who he had become, and whether he could emerge from this meeting not just as someone bringing assistance, but as a reliable presence. I want to be here for as long as it takes, he said, conviction threading through his words. But I need you to help me learn what that means. Ellie scrutinized him, weighing her decision against the backdrop of hope and fear. The silence stretched, revealing the shared struggle that would either bind them or pull them apart. Jake felt the weight of the moment, a realization coursing through him. This very instance could crack open a door to genuine change, not just for Ellie, but for himself. But as Ellie shifted nervously, battling her instincts, Jake braced himself for a journey that could lead them both into uncharted territory. Are you sure you're ready for this? She finally asked, a mixture of defiance and uncertainty clouding her expression. I am, he affirmed, unsure of what awaited them but determined to find out. With that, they stood at the precipice of a relationship that would challenge not only their views of the world but of themselves. And in that fragile moment, the next steps loomed ahead, both thrilling and terrifying. Could their connection transcend their worlds, or would it shatter under the weight of reality? As he awaited Ellie's next move, the tension crackled in the air. The moment had arrived where past and present would collide, propelling them into an unknown future. The silence grew heavier, an air thick with unspoken fears and hopes. Jake felt the sharp edges of the moment, grappling with the vulnerability that coursed between them. Could he really offer support to someone so distant from the world he was used to? As he searched Ellie's expression for answers, he felt the stakes rise. I've never really needed to depend on anyone, she said, voice barely above a whisper. The confession hung in the air like fog. It's hard to change that. The admission hit him, revealing layers of isolation that seemed insurmountable. It pushed him to confront a growing unease about his own dependency on routine and success. Jake needed to dig deeper even if it meant confronting harsh truths. Neither have I, he countered. But I've always had the option to do so. The words felt foreign but true. Options had been his solace, yet they seemed like a curse in their duality. Ellie's life provided no safety net, and he couldn't ignore the guilt that crept in, feeding off the disparity between their realities. As he forced himself to engage, Jake had to remind himself that real connection required more than just words. He needed to embrace authenticity, welcoming the risk of exposure. What if we just start with small things? You can tell me about your day, how you get by. I want to understand without any judgments. Ellie studied him with a mixture of wariness and curiosity. It wouldn't be pretty, she warned, yet there was a flicker of intrigue igniting her guarded demeanor. Pretty isn't what I'm looking for, he replied, steadying his resolve. Tell me about the worst part. What's the daily grind like? What's the worst thing you deal with? Time seemed to stand still as Ellie appeared to weigh her options. Finally, her shoulders began to relax, and she raised her chin slightly. There are days I don't know if I'll have food or how to pay bills. I go with my little sister to food pantries. Sometimes we need to skip meals to make what little groceries we have last longer. The acknowledgement seemed to tear at the deep-seated privilege that he had taken for granted. And your sister? He prodded gently, knowing this could lead him further into her world. She's all I have left, Ellie continued, her voice stronger now, revealing the fierce protection she held in her heart. I try to keep her spirits up, you know? Tell her we'll be okay. But that's becoming harder to believe. Her words ignited an unsettling realization within him. The comfort of his life had not prepared him for the raw, demanding nature of Barbary. It brought forth the stark contrast of his daily concerns, efforts to manage investments, and market pressures against the battle Ellie faced each day just to survive. Jake felt compelled to offer something beyond financial support. Maybe we can brainstorm a way to get some resources for you both, he said, the idea sparking with urgency. I can't solve everything, but we can explore options together. Someone helping you shouldn't feel like charity. It can be a partnership. Her skepticism returned, and Jake could see the storm behind her eyes. What's the catch? You're not going to just swoop in and solve everything, right? Life doesn't work that way. He swallowed, recognizing the impact of his privilege. I don't intend to. This is a commitment. Your trust must come first. If you don't feel ready, I'll respect that. I just want to be a consistent presence without expecting anything in return. Ellie took a step back, arms crossing instinctively over her chest. You want to be here? Prove it. Then what do you need from me? He challenged, his own stare intensifying. If I'm to understand, I need you to show me. Their eyes locked, and uncharted terrain lay ahead. Tension surged between them, the potential for openness balanced on a knife's edge. The battle inside Ellie was palpable. Her defenses were rising, but something deeper called to her, a desire to connect, to unburden. In that moment, a realization dawned on Jake. To gain her trust would require him to dismantle his own carefully constructed barriers, exposing vulnerabilities of his own. I know I'm asking a lot. So maybe you can start by telling me one thing you've never told anyone else. If I'm willing to bear parts of myself, shouldn't you? It was a daring ask, a pivot point that could shatter their tentative peace or forge a bond of authenticity. As Ellie's expression shifted from surprise to contemplation, he knew they were now two souls standing on the edge of their intertwined realities. But could he truly be counted on? The answer loomed uncomfortably as Jake awaited her response, a weight settling into the air between them. Both had begun a journey toward revelation, the kind that could ultimately reshape not just their lives, but the foundations upon which they had built themselves. Could the truth lead them toward an unexpected alliance, or would it unlock fears previously buried? The air crackled with the possibilities, leaving them both captivated and anxious for what lay ahead. As Ellie's silence stretched, Jake's heart raced, the weight of the moment pressing heavily on his chest. He couldn't ignore the reality that hung in the air. Both were vulnerable, each with their walls and scars, struggling to reveal themselves in a world that encouraged defense. He sensed that whatever Ellie chose to share bore the potential to redefine their interaction. It was not just an exchange of stories. It was a test of their humanity. Finally, Ellie broke the tension. I once thought it would be easier to just disappear, she confessed. Leave everything behind. But it's not that simple. There's my sister. Her voice cracked, vulnerability spilling forth with every word. I can't be selfish like that. Jake leaned in, feeling the gravity of her pain settle around them. You're not selfish. You're human, he insisted, his tone soft yet firm. But see how much you care? That makes you strong, not weak. As she continued to speak, fragments of her past emerged, layered with instances of struggle and survival. Her vulnerability offered him a window into her world, and with each revelation, Jake felt the foundations of his own complacency quake. His routine was a comforting shadow, a whisper of accomplishment that began to feel hollow in the light of Ellie's lived experience. He quickly realized how far removed his preoccupations had been from the reality she outlined. His professional dilemmas about investments paled against the starkness of her fears about survival. Each detail she shared weighed on him, illuminating avenues of empathy he never realized were dormant within. The instinct to fix things surfaced again, but he quelled it, understanding his task was to listen and support, not to swoop in with solutions. When Ellie finished sharing, a moment of silence enveloped them once more. It was that rare and fragile quiet that often signaled a shift, a pivot toward understanding. I appreciate you opening up. That's not easy to do, he said, hoping to encourage her trust further. What would it mean to feel safe? To believe you can lean on someone? Her brow furrowed, grappling with that thought, as uncertainty flickered in her eyes. It's hard to imagine, she admitted, the vulnerability laced with an unspoken yearning for connection. Every time I've tried, I end up disappointed. Jake felt the rawness of her admission. He empathized deeply, knowing his relationships were laced with expectations and disappointments too, though perhaps of a different flavor. What if I told you I'm willing to be uncomfortable? Because I want to understand you. I want us to figure this out together. The gravity of his words hung in the air, tension tangible between them as Ellie considered his proposal. He was offering discomfort willingly, an opening to forge a deeper connection while downplaying the boundaries that had been built over time. What if we try that together? She suggested cautiously, but a newfound flicker of determination had ignited within her. It was a subtle shift, but Jake grasped its significance and invitation, not just to test their mutual accord but to ignite the seed of change. Yes. What does that look like for you? He asked, his voice steady, inviting. Their exchange was becoming more than merely conversation. It was a bridge toward exploration, toward a union forged in vulnerability. Jake pondered the implications. Every aspect of their lives was built on understanding others, but wasn't he at time to understand themselves? As they forged ahead, the dynamic between them was shifting. He realized he needed to confront his own ideals and insecurities, allowing the imperfect connection to anchor them both. Jake knew this commitment would demand more of him than he had anticipated, an unraveling of his own needs and desires. Let's call the food pantries together, he suggested, eyes locking with hers, a challenge intertwining hope. We can figure out which one works best. Maybe I can help you sort options. As they both stood on the precipice of collaboration, the uncertainty remained palpable. Could this approach genuinely create a path forward? In his mind, Jake recognized that real change would demand more than just action. It would require patience, understanding, and an embrace of complexity. But his resolve remained strong. This was more than just supporting Ellie. It was an opportunity to rebuild himself authentically. He was determined to navigate this tangled reality together. Then, at that exact moment, a siren blared in the distance, cutting through the intensity. It reminded Jake of the outside world, the pressures of his job, the responsibilities he held, and the inevitable return of his reality looming. His heart sank for a brief instant. The question nagged at him hard. Could he balance what lay ahead of him, a potential burgeoning alliance, with the merciless demands waiting to pull him away? Don't think you can just walk away when times get tough, Ellie said, reading the flicker of doubt in his eyes. If you truly want to be here, you need to mean it. The challenge hung between them yet again, for both were poised to step into uncharted territory. His next move would be critical, either fortifying the trust they had started to build or unraveling it completely. With a heavy breath, Jake felt himself grappling with the tension of his dual responsibilities of personal evolution intermingling with the expectations of his existing world. The ultimate question lingered: was he prepared to face the turbulence ahead for the sake of a bond that held the potential for greatness? As he contemplated this, spring stood on the horizon, poised to transform their connection into something entirely unforeseen. Jake's thoughts swirled as the siren faded into the distance, embodying the challenge ahead. The weight of his dual existence threatened to crash over him like an unforgiving tide. On one side lay the comforting familiarity of his career, a facade of success, a world governed by numbers and projected profits. On the other, Ellie's raw, tumultuous spirit tugged at him, urging him toward the unknown, where emotional bonds awaited exploration. The very thought of balancing both realms felt like a juggling act on the edge of a precipice. "Let us do it then," he said, summoning conviction into his voice. "We can start by reaching out to the food pantries tonight." He hoped this would not only serve as a step forward for Ellie but also as a litmus test for his own resolve to commit to change. The thought of tackling such a tangible challenge with her felt invigorating, yet the whispering doubts lurked, reminding him of the stark contrast between their worlds. They moved through a nearby park, the shadows lengthening as dusk settled in. Nature was transitioning, much like the dynamic between them. Jake was attuned to the subtle shifts in the environment, how the soft rustle of leaves echoed their conversation, and the way the fading light painted Ellie's face with warmth, illuminating her determination. Ellie took a breath, her fingers twitching at her side as if she was weighing the weight of their tasks ahead. "I haven't been able to trust anyone for so long," she said softly. "What if this ends up being another disappointment?" "Then we'll deal with it," he reassured her, although self-doubt crept into his mind. Would he truly be able to confront the complexities of this venture? The realization that he was stepping into uncharted territory filled him with both exhilaration and trepidation. This was about more than just food pantries. It was about establishing roots, a commitment to lean on each other when the storms of life threatened to uproot them. But he still felt that unfamiliar gnaw at him, the fear that his present obligations might collide with this newly ignited bond. The demands of a high-pressure job didn't simply disappear. They clung to him like shadows, threatening to pull him back into his old patterns. As thoughts of projecting quarterly reports and meeting deadlines encroached on his mind, he took a deliberate breath, focusing on the vibrant energy radiating from Ellie. "Jake," she began, eyes searching his face. "I want you to know that it means everything to me, this willingness to be uncomfortable. But please, don't disappear like everyone else has." The tremor in her voice tugged at his internal compass. It anchored him closer to the truth that his own fears about inadequacy could have real consequences. He searched Ellie's gaze, intent on conveying sincerity. "I promise I won't." Yet the pledge loomed over him, transforming into a catalyst for reflection. What if he faltered? What if, when the tides turned turbulent, he returned to the protective shell of his career, abandoning this newfound connection? These concerns fractured his peace, but they also ignited a fierce determination within him. The idea of failure was daunting, yet the thought of avoiding discomfort, the very retreat he had practiced for years, felt like surrender. There was power in recognizing this fear, and with it, a responsibility to confront it head-on. Every second spent near Ellie felt like a prompting, a pivotal moment inviting him to redefine his life. As they reached a secluded bench, he deliberately sat beside her, closing the distance that once felt like an insurmountable wall. "Let us set some goals," he suggested, wanting to structure their approach beyond just charity. "What do we hope to achieve by doing this together?" Her face illuminated with lucidity, reflecting a potential he had not yet seen fully. "I want to feel like I can count on someone like this is worth something." There it was, the glimmer of hope veiled beneath her words, urging him to join her in the discomfort of unknowing. Jake pondered deeply on Ellie's desire for connection. Did he want the same? The thought resonated, a powerful undertow dragging him toward vulnerability. "Then let us make a plan," he replied, excitement battling the growing anxiety. Engaging in this experiment of trust was no longer merely about Ellie's safety, but a chance to test the boundaries of his own rigidity. As they discussed specific actions and milestones, Jake felt anticipation build, but so did a sense of urgency. The deadline of tomorrow loomed heavy, compelling him to act without reservation. Could they actually lay a foundation on which they could trust each other? As conversations flowed, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were both riding a wave of unspoken emotions, an exhilarating, yet terrifying journey into the uncharted depths of their spirits. And just as he felt they were building momentum, his phone buzzed in his pocket. The screen illuminated with an urgent email notification, a crisis at work, demanding his immediate attention. The juxtaposition of this external chaos against the internal quiet of their moment felt like a cruel twist of fate. Jake inhaled deeply, the blend of fear and determination churning within him. He turned to Ellie, her expression shifting slightly as she sensed his distraction. "What is it?" she asked, a blend of concern and curiosity in her voice. In that moment, Jake felt the thickness of choice. Could he navigate this new path when the familiar sirens called him back to his old life? The challenge loomed large before him, the fear of going backward juxtaposed against the hope of moving forward. "Just give me a second," he managed, his pulse quickening. Knowing he was at a crossroads, the pivotal decision weighed heavily upon him. He was forced to confront both his responsibilities and his desires, both of which tugged at his spirit, demanding he choose. As he stood to face the reality of the call, Ellie remained steady in her gaze, unwavering even amidst uncertainty. Would he step away from the potential of their connection to fall back into old habits? The tension lingered in the air, each second stretching toward an undeniable climax. What awaited him once he made a choice? The promise of tomorrow shimmered tantalizingly on the horizon, but could he grasp it without risking everything? Jake's breath caught in his throat as the email screen flickered, demanding attention with its urgent content. It was a crisis: budget discrepancies that threatened the quarterly report. The reality of his life in corporate America swung back into focus, a gravitational pull inviting him into the familiar vortex of spreadsheets and a toxic work culture. Beneath the urgency lay an unsaid truth. The siren call of his career beckoned him with the safety of predictability. His heart raced, torn between two disparate realms: the corporate obligations that granted him financial security and the raw, unfiltered world Ellie represented. Each choice felt like grappling with chains that clung to him, binding him to the past. Yet, in that moment, Ellie's unwavering gaze stirred something deeper within him. "Jake," she said softly, urging him to remain present. "What do you need to do?" The words hovered in the air, a challenge masquerading as concern. Ellie wasn't merely supportive. She was assessing him, seeking the vulnerability he had been reluctant to show. It ignited a flicker of determination deep inside. Maybe surrendering to the corporate grind wasn't his only option. "I need to respond to this," but he hesitated, grappling with the tension building both within him and between them. "I don't want to lose this moment with you." "Then don't," she replied swiftly, her confidence cracking through his doubt. "You can respond, but make sure it doesn't keep you from this." Her words shone like beacons, cutting through the fog of his anxiety. Jake stood at a precipice, the dual paths ahead unfurling like ribbons. He could choose the drudgery of deadlines and meetings or embrace the raw potential of his blossoming connection with Ellie. Yet the question loomed: could he juggle both without collapsing under the weight of obligation? He took a deliberative breath, determination solidifying into action. "Okay, I'll reply, but let us keep working on our plan while I do." His intellectual side clamored for balance, wanting to maintain order in the chaos. As he sat back on the bench, fingers hovering over his phone screen, the static of corporate wars buzzed in his ears. Yet he couldn't fully concentrate. Instead, he glanced sideways at Ellie, committing her expression to memory. The way her confidence glimmered, seemingly untouched by the shadows lurking in the world outside. The email was a wall he had to scale. Tightening his grip around the phone, he began typing swiftly, invoking the corporate language he employed so many times before. Yet, within him, another language began emerging: the language of vulnerability and relationship, skillfully woven into his professional discourse. As the email polished itself with a mix of urgency and assertiveness, Jake surrendered to a newfound clarity. He could engage in both worlds, drawing strength from them. The professional didn't have to overshadow the personal. They could coexist, like branches on a sturdy tree. Done! He proclaimed, sending the email with finality. Relief washed over him. Now let us brainstorm our goals. Ellie's face lit up, reflecting the determination he had come to admire. What about focusing on community needs first? Let's figure out what pantries are struggling the most? The conversation flowed smoothly, an ebb and flow of ideas and spontaneity that reinforced their bond as partners. Jake felt layers of himself peel away, strategies combined with empathy as they crafted a tangible plan for impact. The growing sense of purpose replaced the fear of failure. This was more than giving back, it was self-discovery. Yet, an undercurrent of something else lurked beneath his newfound enthusiasm, the looming discomfort of letting go of old habits. The urgency of corporate crises would still demand his attention, inevitably distractions would surface. What of the follow-up meetings he knew awaited him? Would he let them diminish the trust he vowed to build with Ellie, or find a way to integrate the two parts of his life? There was no denying the stakes were higher now. Change wasn't a gentle tide, it was a storm ready to sweep across familiar shores. As their brainstorming reached the apex of exhilaration, the phone buzzed again, a message from his boss, demanding an immediate call. Anxiety spiked within, a whirlwind of doubt countered by the worth of what he was building with Ellie. Jake? Ellie's voice broke through his thoughts. Yes? He replied, focusing back on her. Promise me you'll stay in this, she urged, eyes searching his. Whatever this is, it's worth fighting for. Jake's heart raced as he faced that haunting mirror, reflection made clearer by her resolve. Could he persist in this dance while juggling responsibilities? The choice felt monumental, the implications stretching far beyond this one interaction. He remained silent, debating the direction of his answer as the clock ticked softly against the encroaching darkness. The weight of responsibility wrapped tightly around him, much like the corporate chains he'd grown up within since he first stepped into this world. But what if, just this time, he could break free? The moment hung heavy, poised at the edge of decision. Jake drew a deep breath, preparing to respond, when a spark of realization ignited within him. Perhaps the most pressing choice wouldn't be about balancing the two worlds, but about recognizing which path truly held his heart. And as he formed a reply in his mind, the urgency surged once more. Was he ready to step into a reality that could redefine everything? How could he ensure the choices he made today wouldn't shatter the trust now slowly building with Ellie? The impending conclusion beckoned, a doorway opening, yet threatening to close with the weight of truth yet unspoken. What awaited him on the other side? Jake felt time dilate around him, each second stretching into an eternity, as he confronted the gravity of his choice. He could feel his chest tightening, consumed by both fear and exuberance. The simplicity of Ellie's request tugged at corners of his mind. Stay engaged, stay present, don't let life slip by. He looked at her, inhaling the essence of this moment, her unwavering gaze, the commitment etched into her expression. There was power in it, a resilience that jolted him out of his corporate stupor. This was more than just a transient relationship. It was the ignition of a deeper calling, a chance to rediscover who he was underneath the polished veneer of corporate jargon and financial reports. What do you want to do? He asked, voice surprising himself with its steadiness, the anxiety taking a backseat. The thought of a new path unfurled before him, vibrant and full of promise. He could feel the stirrings of ambition, different from the mindless pursuit of profit, but rather, fueled by a connection to something larger than himself. Ellie's enthusiasm was palpable. Let us start by targeting specific needs in our area. I've done some research. Local shelters are overwhelmed, especially during the winter months. We can set up a food drive or even a fundraiser. The fire ignited in him, resonating with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. Ideas and strategies flowed between them, constructing not just a project but a vision of purpose. As they brainstormed, he considered how many times he had commandeered meetings in his corporate life with hollow ambitions. This felt different, this felt real. But temptation whispered at the edge of his mind. The vibration of his phone pulled him momentarily. Another message from the boss flooded the moment with the chilling reminder of duties hanging like shadows. On instinct, he reached for it, battling the urge to prioritize obligations over this newfound sense of self. What if he continued this path? Would the corporate weight bind him back to chains he was desperate to break? Jake? Ellie's voice again punctured his distraction, somehow perceptive of his internal battle. You were saying? She encouraged, her eyes urging him not to retreat. Torn, he hesitated. How could he reveal the truth wrestling in his mind? I almost feel like I'm being pulled back, he confessed, and the vulnerability tasted foreign. Between you, this mission, and the responsibilities I still have at work. Ellie's face softened with understanding. It's going to be hard. Nothing worth doing is easy. But you know what you really want, don't you? He balled his hands into fists, recognizing the conflict within. This was a defining moment, yet the reality was steeped in complications. What does it mean to want something? He mused aloud. Can I really want both? The silence that ensued echoed loud enough for the question to reverberate in his thoughts. He realized that wanting both his corporate life and this new connection was a validity he had denied. The avenue toward success might not require the abandonment of his job, but a strategic navigation through it. He felt a surge of determination crystallizing in his gut. Maybe I need to redefine what success means for me, he said, the words startling in their sincerity. He saw a vision where he could leverage his corporate experience to fuel a greater good while anchoring this new purpose in his life with Ellie. Could he transform the skills he had honed into a platform for change? The corporate world had molded him, but it didn't have to define him. The phone buzzed again, a notification that felt different now. It wasn't just a demand. It was a choice, a reminder that life would keep pressing, regardless of whether he was ready to catch up. Jake, Ellie asserted, breaking through the tension wrapping around him. Trust yourself. You can do both, don't forget that. He saw the truth in her eyes. His inner turmoil began to unravel. He had the power to rewrite his narrative. It was more than survival, it was about belonging, about making choices that resonated with his core. Let's tackle this, he declared, reinvigorated. I'll commit to this mission, and I won't let work stall my growth. As they plotted their first steps, the conversation became increasingly daring and ambitious, revealing capabilities in himself that he hadn't acknowledged. He was no longer Jake of the cubicles. He was suddenly something more diverse, more profound. But with resolve comes the reality of challenges. He could almost hear the ominous clock ticking what now awaited in his professional life. The storm wasn't merely a metaphor. It was real, and looming, and he would have to face it. Could he really lead this double life? And when the call from his boss finally came, would he step up to the pressure, or risk it all for what could be an uncharted yet thrilling journey? The moment hung suspended, filled with promise yet fraught with unanswered questions. Jake stood on a precipice, daring to leap into the unknown. How far could he fall before he learned to fly? Jake woke the next morning with a single-minded focus that had eluded him for years. The sunlight poured through his bedroom window, illuminating the dust motes dancing lazily in the air. But instead of the familiar trepidation about another day at the office, he felt an electric current running through him, the promise of new possibilities electrifying his mind. He quickly washed up, dressing in a simple t-shirt and jeans, finally shedding the tailored suits of his corporate persona. As he descended the stairs, Jake noticed the emptiness of the hallway. The house felt vast yet somehow constricting. It was a stark reminder of the isolation that had often come with his professional life, the feelings of being at the periphery of meaningful interactions. But today was different. He was determined to change the script. Sipping coffee, he reached for his laptop, where scattered notes from last night crunched beneath his fingers, ideas brimming with potential. He wanted to build something tangible from the inspiration Ellie had ignited within him. Jake began drafting a plan for the food drive, his mind racing with strategies, timelines, and contacts to establish connections with local businesses to gather support. A phone call from his boss shattered his concentration, the screen lighting up as if taunting him. He hesitated, the impulse to pick up battling against the importance of maintaining his current momentum. This wasn't just an escape, this was his evolution. Clenching his jaw, he silenced the call. It would be a boundary, drawing a line in the sand that he was no longer willing to cross. As the first hour passed, however, doubt crept in. The weight of lingering responsibilities clawed at his resolve. What if his boss called again? What if he missed an important directive or, worse, the opportunity to climb the corporate ladder? But as he thought about Ellie's vision, those concepts felt hollow, feigned successes devoid of meaning. It was a fragmentation of self that he could no longer bear. Jake breathed deeply, fighting against the swell of anxiety. He took a moment to reflect on what truly mattered. Could he devote himself to this mission while navigating the intricacies of corporate life? He needed to take a bold step, to confront his fears head-on. With newfound determination, he opened his front door and stepped out. The crisp morning air was invigorating, contrasting the stifling atmosphere he had grown accustomed to in his office. He walked purposefully, heading to a nearby cafe, which he had often overlooked in favor of productively packed meetings. As he reached the cafe, he was struck by the ambient chatter of patrons around him, animated discussions, moments of laughter, connections unfolding in real time. The barista greeted him with warmth as he placed his order. It was jarring yet exhilarating, and he realized that this mundane act linked back to Ellie's insistence on being present. Seizing the moment, he casually engaged a couple seated nearby, sharing ideas about community involvement, while enjoying the atmosphere. Time slipped away, and by the time he left, he had not only formed a partnership with local coffee distributors but had also secured a small donation for the food drive. The development reinforced his belief that he could engage the corporate world while simultaneously fostering genuine interactions. Returning home, exhilaration bubbled in his chest. He had reshaped not just a meeting but an enterprise fueled by passion. His strategic mind had melded seamlessly with this newfound purpose, showcasing a dynamic approach that had been dormant for far too long. Yet, with success came trepidation. A delicate balance loomed before him. Could he manage his commitment to the food drive while staying afloat in a corporate environment rife with expectations? Jake had ignited something transformative within himself, but doubt lingered at the back of his mind, gnawing at the edges. As evening descended and he sat alone contemplating his next steps, the phone buzzed again, a notification from his boss flashing ominously across the screen. He was faced with a critical decision: would he answer and reclaim his previous life, or would he confront the confrontation that he had avoided for too long? The weight of the moment was enough to shift the air around him. With an exhale that echoed with uncertainty yet firm resolve, he felt the choice shaping his future solidify in his mind. He needed to embrace the challenges that lay ahead and define his own trajectory. But as he contemplated his decision, the screen flashed with a message that sent a jolt through him, information that could change everything. What lay behind this notification, and how would it test the new path he had begun to forge? Jake sat in his apartment, the soft glow of the setting sun spilling through the window, cascading shadows across the room. The reality of his choices weighed heavy, but he felt a resolute clarity. It had been several weeks since he met Ellie, and their journey together unveiled profound layers of understanding. He had seen poverty through her eyes, learned the value of trust through their conversations, and discovered the transformative power of vulnerability. He had committed to their partnership. Together, they tackled food drives and outreach initiatives, engaging local businesses to build a support network. Each day brought obstacles, but with Ellie beside him, they gained traction, reaching families in need throughout their community. With every success, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a stark contrast to the hollow victories of his previous life in corporate America. Yet lingering challenges from the workplace began to creep in. His boss's demands echoed in his mind, competing for attention. But each time the phone buzzed, Jake found the courage to resist, choosing instead to focus on Ellie and the mission they shared. On the cusp of launching their first major food distribution event, Jake pondered their progress. The very notion of failure had begun to dissolve. They had put in hours of effort, telling their story and rallying support. As he reviewed their materials for the event, determination bloomed within him. They had reached thousands, creating a ripple effect, demonstrating that real change was possible. The contrast from his life a few weeks ago was staggering. He recalled the uncertainty, fear, and facades he had worn, suppressing his desires to fit into a mold he no longer desired. Now he stood firm, not just as a tech mogul, but as a person willing to invest his heart in something worthy. As the day of the event dawned, Jake felt a surge of anticipation. He arrived early to set up, the hum of excited chatter filling the air as volunteers hustled about, organizing supplies. He glanced around, spotting Ellie directing efforts with a natural poise, her countenance a blend of purpose and joy. She had grown, transforming from a timid girl burdened with worry into a leader radiating strength and encouragement. Jake approached her. "Today's the day," he said softly. "We did it together." Ellie's eyes sparkled, a flicker of pride warming the space between them. "And we'll keep doing it. This is just the beginning." They shared a solemn moment, reflective yet exhilarating. For Jake, it felt like an awakening, realizing he had chosen to rewrite his narrative. He reached out, squeezing Ellie's shoulder gently, a gesture of solidarity and shared triumph. As the crowd gathered, anticipation electrified the air. They welcomed families, offering food and resources, but they also provided stories a chance for connection and community. The initiative grew beyond the mechanics of survival. It became a testament to resilience, hope, and solidarity. In that space, Jake marveled at the warmth of human connection, something he had spent years chasing in boardrooms but only found when he opened himself up to vulnerability. During a lull in the event, Jake took a moment to step back, absorbing the scene. Voices harmonized in laughter and conversation, families sharing meals, forging bonds amidst shared circumstances. Ellie approached him, holding a small girl in her arms, and without thinking, she placed the child on his hip. "Meet Maya, my little sister's friend," she said, her eyes shining. "She wanted to help out today." In that moment, a realization washed over Jake. This was his new life, a life bound by authenticity and connection, rooted in the resolve that anchored his every action. "You're doing amazing work," he responded, his voice steady. "You're changing lives." As the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting hues of gold and mauve, Jake knew that he had accomplished something profound, not merely for Ellie or the families they served but for himself. Closure arrived when they finished distributing the last parcels, standing before the volunteers gathered around them, eager to hear Ellie share their journey. "Together, we've built something we can be proud of," she began. "This is just a taste of what's possible when we come together." Her words sent a ripple of recognition through him. He was part of a family that transcended bloodlines, gathered based on a shared desire to uplift, support, and empower one another. They finished the day with cheers, and as they began to pack up, Jake caught Ellie's eye. "Thank you," he said simply, recognizing the journey they had forged side by side. Through her courage, he had found the courage to embrace his own path, a path that strayed far from the confines of the corporate high-rise and toward the heart of community. As Jake drove home that night, a lightness filled his chest. He envisioned more outreach, and propelled by hope, he reached out to his former colleagues, inviting them to join their efforts. This marked his commitment to blending both worlds, the corporate knowledge and the drive for community service. Real change often begins with surrendering to the experiences that shape us. Today, Jake stood tall, proud, and resolute, knowing that his actions reflected his genuine self. The threads of his life were woven anew, a tapestry of empathy, connection, and commitment to making a meaningful impact. And in that bright moment, he affirmed silently that he would never go back. Action mattered more than ever. Now, you need to take action too. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help more people find their path to personal growth and connection. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion, because your thoughts matter. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, and remember that real change only happens when we show up together. Don't wait even one more second to support the channel and celebrate the incredible journeys of personal overcoming.